What I want to know is the following. So I looked at the numbers. I think you're just turned 33 this year, I want to say. And we now know your birthday is in late April. Yes? Did I get April 30th? If I'm not April the 30th?
30th, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So you've lived 33 years with your last name being Bin Laden. What has it been life-wise when you go to school? Hey, Noor Bin Laden. Hey, there's an element to that when you have a last name. And it's not like a last name of Washington. You could be related to George Washington lineage-wise, but if somebody says Washington, well, they're going to know there's a lot of Washingtons. Kennedy, people automatically go Kennedy. Trump, they're going to go automatically Trump. Vanderbilt, they're going to go automatically Vanderbilt. Bin Laden, they're only going to go one place. What's life like with the last name of Bin Laden?
The number one thing to me is that carrying a name that is so different to who I am and my values has definitely had its challenges throughout my life, and post the tragedy of 9/11, especially. That being said, I have perspective with the situation, right? And this is something that has definitely helped me in navigating the fact that I carry this name, is that I was always able to put things in perspective, even at the age of 14, when, as I said, this tragedy happened and so many people suffered at the hands of these barbaric attacks. But you get to put perspective. And since that day, my thoughts and my feelings have always been with the victims of 9/11. And so, yes, I do carry a name, and it hasn't been easy in certain respects, but my thoughts always go to those who have greatly suffered.
I can only imagine, but if you don't mind going pre-14, let's go to the 12-year-old, 10-year-old, 11-year-old. What did you know about your family from your father's side? Because my understanding is your mother, who's a New York Times bestseller, she wrote a book in '04, translated in almost 40 different languages, and she's done amazing work. And I think you have two other sisters, I want to say. I want to say it's two older sisters, and you're the younger one. And, and then your mother's half Swiss from the father's side and half Persian from mother's side. Both your grandmothers, I believe, are Persian or Iranian. And then on your dad's side, being the half older brother of Osama bin Laden. So pre-14, what did you know about your last name, and what did you know from your father's lineage? What did your mom tell you? Did you know some other evil stories and what the plans were? I'd want to kind of go there pre-go and post 9/11.
There are a lot of questions there, but let me start by saying this. First of all, my parents split up. I was 8 months old. There had been some problems in the marriage right before I was born, and a few months later, after I arrived, the marriage collapsed. So, and thankfully, those events happened in Switzerland. So I've actually never set foot in Saudi Arabia. So I grew up from that moment onwards in an atmosphere of having, my parents' divorce in the background. And bless my mother, because despite, everything that was going on, and sadly, my father created a lot of problems in the courts for her. And for us, it was the children, it was very difficult, the different things he put us through. But bless her, I never grew up with any anger or resentment towards him. And she always explained to us, that although she had fallen in love with him, she came to understand that, and after analyzing the society in Saudi Arabia for 6 or 8 years when she was living there with him, she came to realize that that was her choice, and she didn't want to impose this choice on her 3 girls. And my father was demonstrating at the time there were some indications that he was going to be a much stricter father with his Saudi, in his mind, girls, as opposed to his foreign wife. And my mother, for her, it became vital, especially after realizing that although the society in Saudi Arabia had modernized at such a tremendous rate, in the mid late 70s, after the petrol boom, she at the time had the hope that with that society would modernize as well. But her analysis led her to realize that it wouldn't be the case, and it became imperative for her to extricate the three of us from growing up with this culture and in this society. And so growing up, I'm sorry, I'm coming back, but growing up, I grew up with this understanding of this clash of mentalities and values, right? From the West, as opposed to the Middle East, and more specifically Saudi Arabia. And I would, listen to my mother's stories about her time in Saudi Arabia, my older sisters, when they were in school, the things they were teaching them in school. My eldest sister, she came home one day from school, and they had, at 6 years old, and they had made her write in her notebook, "I love Palestine, I hate Jews." And my mother saw it, and she was like, I mean, there's no way I want my daughters to learn hate, And anyway, this story is
In
she
the book.
discusses it in the book, and what she went, and she went to the headmaster and all of that to complain and tell her that she absolutely, in no uncertain terms, wanted her children to learn hate. And so I grew up, although I wasn't in contact with my father nor the family, I grew up with all these stories that my mother would tell me, and also the fact that she was his right arm in all his businesses. And she has an incredibly unique vantage point from which she analyzes society, right? Because she was a woman and a foreigner who was privy to all the different conversations and power plays between the brothers, the princes, the Bin Laden family at the time being the most powerful family aside from the royal family.
Mm-hmm.
So all the intrigues, and she analyzed the society which is so closed to foreigners and obviously women. So I grew up in a household where she would tell me these stories. I've always been fascinated by history and politics, and so I loved hearing about this. And obviously there was a direct emotional link because of the fact that I was born into this family and the situation with my father. So
There's a lot there. There's a lot in that story on what you're saying.
yeah,
By the way, how did your parents meet? How did your mom and dad meet?
it's actually a very romantic story. They were in Switzerland. My father used to travel, and he was in Switzerland, and that's where they met, and they fell in love over the summer. Apparently, he was very charismatic and charming, and he told her, at the end of the summer, "Will you marry me?" And he didn't actually really want to work or do anything. He wanted to go back to Saudi Arabia to breed Dobermans. And my mother said, "You're much too intelligent. No, you have to go study." They were in their late teens,
Doberman.
early
Wow.
20s. And she said, "No, you're too smart. You have to go and study. You have to go to university." And so they kind of made a pact where she would marry him if he would study. And so that was the beginning of their relationship there. And
Unbelievable.
then they went to America. They studied at USC, and that was in the mid 70s. And
Both of
the
them studied at
beginning,
USC.
yeah. But then my mom got pregnant with my eldest sister, Wafa. But no, so the story is actually quite romantic. The beginning of their relationship. Yeah.
Very cool. Did your mom ever get a chance to actually meet Osama bin Laden or no?
There are a couple of anecdotes. She never had, I would say, conversations with him because he was always, this is something that in the media in the West, they didn't quite get right, but he has always been he was extremely devout from a young age. And so even though my mother was married to one of his brothers, he couldn't, look at her or interact with her. And so it was, for example, one of the stories is that he came to the door of their house and my mother absentmindedly just opened the door. And this is in Saudi Arabia, absentmindedly opened the door. And the boy who was with him had to explain to my mother as Osama bin Laden, gestured, backwards and made shoving gestures with his hand that she should get away because she wasn't veiled or anything. And so my mother didn't understand. And she said, no, but come in, my father's name is Yaslam. Come in, Yaslam is inside, come in. And the boy had to explain to my mother what was going on and why Osama couldn't speak with her because she was uncovered and you couldn't interact with an uncovered woman, right? Over there.
That's powerful to know stories like that and experience that she had.